Hi everyone out there. I'm Dr. Carola Leicht, a lecturer in organizational psychology and behavior here at the University of Kent, and to be precise, at the business school. And together with the business school, we've decided to release a number of video presentations that hopefully will help you and you'll find useful when it comes to revising and sitting exams in times of this pandemic. I'm a psychologist by trade, and I have an expertise in organizational psychology. And so I have a fairly good understanding on how our behavior, our emotions, and our ability to cope are affected by the context and the circumstances we find ourselves in, and how that affects our workplace behavior. As a fairly young widow, I also have personal experience in how traumatic events and situations that we find ourselves in can have a significant impact on how we cope with our work and our daily lives. And it is from that kind of perspective that I want to talk to you today, to give you some advice and guidance on how you can sit exams in times of a pandemic, where the world all that we live in has all of a sudden completely changed and we have to adapt. Some of you may have some experience of traumatic events, including the emotions and the reactions that they have on our behavior. However, many of you may find that this is actually the first significant crisis that you experience, and I'm hoping that this video will help you to give some useful coping tips that will then help you to navigate sitting your exams, revising in your exams, and get through this with the help of us. So this presentation and video will be structured into 4 parts, okay? The first part is sort of taking a sort of perspective. Where are we in regards to for COVID-19? Where are we in regards to policies at the University of Kent? How is it potentially affecting us psychologically? And how can we maintain psychological health during times of crisis and trauma? Then the second and the third part are sort of the meaty bit of the presentation, where I will give you a few tips on how you can revise successfully during the times of COVID-19 and during social, or better said, physical isolation or quarantine, and how to make a better plan. And then the presentation will end with some positives, hopefully showing you that times of crisis are often also times of growth that can provide you with strength and experiences that guide you for the rest of your life. And how can that can be something really positive that you can take forward and help you to navigate you for your workplace and for other life struggles. Okay, before we start with the actual presentation, you can either watch this presentation as a feature-length film, which is about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, I think, or you can watch it as a mini-series with 3 episodes. The first episode would be sort of the background setting. Where are we? What are the policies? What does it do to our psychological health? The second episode is sort of the juicy bit, right? How do you can you revise in times of a pandemic, in social or physical isolation or quarantine? How to make this very important better plan? And then episode 3 out of 3 is sort of the takeaway message. What can we take out of this forward for the rest of our lives? So this is the first episode. Where are we with COVID-19? Well, there's some new policies and news regarding the exam terms, sitting the exam terms in times of COVID-19 that we're going to go over. We're going to briefly talk about daily politics, and then the psychological reactions to stress and trauma, and maintaining mental health during this crisis. So one of the first tips that I want to give you is that during this time, you need to stay informed, okay? The University of Kent has actually put a wide range of new policies out there regarding the exam term, but also regarding any other assessment that has been affected by this crisis, okay? So you need to stay informed and look at the University of Kent website, where you find always the latest information on coronavirus and more detailed information for students, okay? I know no one is keen on reading like 2 or 3 page documents that outline in details how the new rules are going to work. But to be honest, you have to do it. Reading and staying informed on what is going on at Kent will help you to alleviate some of that anxiety that you feel at the moment, or that you might feel. And it will provide you with crucial guidance on how to best achieve and work during these uncertain times. So please check out the website, the documents, the emails that you receive, and read through them carefully. I know it's not fun, but you have to do that. And if you don't understand something, if you don't understand a new policy, ask your module convener, your program director, other students. You're most likely not the only one that hasn't understood this new information. But not engaging with the new information is just not an option at the moment. So please, please stay informed, read up on the policies, and get in touch with us. We are here to help. Don't forget that, okay? All right, to the next bit, the daily politics. Well, at the moment, we are bombarded with a lot of information, right? And unfortunately, a lot of the news are talking about sort of the war on coronavirus. And as a social psychologist, I am very much aware of the fact that words matter. How we talk about things or how we label them affects the way in which we react to them. And whilst the war language might have started as a way to instill a sense of activity, hoping to make people aware that they can actually do something actively to fight against this virus by washing your hand, by keeping your distance, by not traveling much, by staying away from families and friends who might have been sick, it also has a negative connotation. Because like any other war, there are people that experience extreme stress and potentially trauma out of that, because they're going through potentially going through something really, really difficult. And there is no doubt that this pandemic is a stressful situation for everyone living in a country that has had a case. And stress in itself is basically just our body's reaction to feeling threatened or under pressure. And it's very common and can, under normal circumstances, actually be really helpful, because it helps us to be motivated to achieve the things that we want to achieve in our daily lives. And it can help us to meet demands of work, home, and family life. And as I said, there is no doubt that this pandemic is a stressor for everyone. However, it is a stressor that we also share. And there's a brilliant piece in the Harvard Business Review that summarizes how these sudden changes that we all had to make to our daily lives are actually quite similar to grief, as we are losing touch with friends, partners. We all of a sudden are not going on this holiday that we're looking forward, or to celebrate with our fellow students when we have finished an exam, or to when we go down this aisle graduating. So, and there is actually also a really, really fantastic Twitter feed that summarizes all of those changes by a professor at Stanford University. university. And both of those things I've hyperlinked on here. I'd really urge you to check them out, and maybe you can understand some of the things that you have been feeling over the past few months. And then trauma is basically just going one step further, right? It's the experience of some severe psychological stress following any terrible or life-threatening event. And for those of you who had experiences of friends or relatives being diagnosed with COVID, you most likely will experience some form of trauma through that. And especially if someone close to you has died, the fact that our normal grieving and coping strategies, the bereavement, the joint bereavement that we feel when we go to burial rituals, the fact that those are also prohibited at the moment makes it much harder for us to actually cope with these kind of things, because we don't feel the shared love from our others around that. And so when we experience this kind of stress or this kind of trauma, there are a number of psychological consequences with that. First of all, it obviously affects our emotions, and you might have noticed that on you as well. You feel a bit more anxious, depressed, nervous, afraid. You have these racing thoughts. You kind of start neglecting yourself. Maybe you feel lonely. And what most people actually don't really associate with that is also that the fact that you might feel really irritable, that you just don't have the way of kind of dealing with yourselves, because you feel so impatient and wound up. Okay. Then the second consequence is actually on our behavior. So when we experience extreme stress like that, we all have difficulty actually concentrating or making any decision. And that goes from, making a decision of what to eat for dinner or what to do for the day or what to wear. Anything like that becomes much, much more difficult. And the thing about concentration, I want to ask you, have you caught yourself scrolling through Facebook whilst watching telly, not being even able to motivate to sit through a whole movie in one sitting? All of that is to do with the fact that you will find it much harder to concentrate at the moment because you're experiencing stress. Also, eating habits might change, or you might try to avoid certain situations, like reading emails about new policies. And finally, there are physiological reactions, which are often muscle aches, tensions, headaches. You might feel really, really tired, although you sleep well. That's one for me. I, at the moment, could constantly sleep, although I sleep quite well at night. And that's just because our brain is working overtime all the time at the moment, just trying to adapt, trying to understand what is happening to all of us, right? So now that we know some of the consequences of stress, how can we actually stay mentally healthy? Well, the NHS actually has brought out a really good website on how to stay mentally healthy in times of COVID. And because all of us, stress, our reactions to stress, because we're all individuals, are all going to be a little bit different. And so it will be for you to find out how you're reacting to stress and how you can best cope with it. So I'd urge you to go to the NHS website, which is hyperlinked here, and actually read through that and think about what might help you, especially during this time. However, stress and trauma that we are actually going through right now can impede your performance during the exam period, right? So because when we're stressed, and every exam term in itself is already stressful, now putting a pandemic on top of that makes it a really, really stressful time. You will have these kind of racing thoughts and nervousness and anxious. Most of you might have interrupted sleep, feel tired, have these headaches and muscle aches and, shoulder pains and all of that, right? So there is, going back to the mental health in times of COVID-19 from the NHS, but also hopefully some of the tips on how to stay motivated during this time might help you to overcome this. And then there is the consequence of lacking concentration and lacking decision making. And for that, I would like to refer you to the section 3, or the episode 2 of this presentation on how to make a better plan. Because I think it's gonna be hugely important for you to go into this exam period not only prepared with the module content, but also an idea on how you will actually tackle this. All right, this is the end of the first part of the presentation. For those of you who watch this in episodes, goodbye for now. For those of you who continue watching, we are now going into revising in times of a pandemic in social physical isolation and quarantine. Okay. This section will focus on how you can stay motivated and why I believe that actually the term social isolation, we should kind of get rid of it a little bit, because I don't want you to be socially isolated. Of course, I don't want you to, hug your friends or go and see your grandma, but so I want you to be physically isolating from people, but please stay connected. This is gonna be crucial for you if you actually want to make it through this exam period, okay? Because only by staying connected, you will also have the motivation to keep on going. All right, revising, how to stay motivated. So my first tip is actually kind of linked to the better plan, okay? So being in physical isolation, so not being around people much, especially when you're isolating completely sort of on your own, if you are in your student accommodation and you're on your own in there, being in quarantine, those things can really mess with your perception of time and days. So what I want you to do is to get actually a physical calendar, can be printouts of your Google calendar or whatever, and get monthly, weekly overviews for the next few months until your exam period is finished. And I want you to hang it up somewhere where you can see it every day. And you keep track on what day it is, okay? This will help you immensely on staying grounded during these times, knowing where you are in the week and actually physically seeing how far away your exam is. This will help you to stay grounded in times where maybe one day blends into the next, which I've experienced already, but also in times where everything all of a sudden happens all at once. So for example, one of your friends or relatives gets ill. Okay, so this is going to be a really helpful tool for you. But before you hang it up, I want you to mark down the exam days, and including the release and submission dates, And I want you then to start structuring the months until then. And I can't urge you enough to also include rest days from academic work, where you stand back, you don't think about your academic work, you take time for yourself and you do things to rest and recuperate, okay? And then you can start sketching out each week which revisions do you want to have done by the end of which week, and then sketch out each day, and try to make it as specific as possible. So for example, you can say, okay, I'll get up at 8 o'clock, I'll have breakfast, I get ready for the day, don't forget to shower, and then from 9 to 10, I'll go over the versions from the previous day or the previous week. Then from 10 to 10:30, I'll have a coffee break, I might catch up with some friends online or with my family. Then from 10:30 until 12 o'clock, 12:15, I do another revision slot. Then from 12:15 to 2 o'clock, I have lunches, I have further chats with my friends, with relatives. Then I have another block of revisions from 2 to 4, and I will revise Module X, Topic Y. And then from 4 to 5, I'll do my workout. And then from 5 o'clock, it's me time. I can do whatever I want. My second tip for revising is to actually not stay social isolated. Physically isolated, yes. Social isolated, no. I want you to actually work online much more with your peers than you might have done previously. So first of all, I want you to plan your revisions, make sure that you have enough time for each module, for each exam, and revise everything that you need to revise for. Map out your revision plan and have sort of buffer zones within them, right? So in case you fall short on one day, you can catch up, right? And I'm sure you all had to very, very quickly learn how to use Zoom, how to use Microsoft Teams, how to stay in touch with your lecturers when we had to move everything online. So I want you to use these tools, especially Zoom, I found really, really super good, for yourself. Set up revisions and study groups with friends, fellow students, and make it regular appointments. I urge you to have at least one study group for each exam. And then I want you to use those study groups wisely. Prep exam questions for each other and then answer them. Discuss the answers that you've come up with. Make quizzes for each other. And then why not turn one of those study groups into a happy hour after, right? To say, or stay also socially connected. So the social connection and the revision goes kind of hand to hand. And having these appointments with other students where you touch base, you get in touch with each other, will help you to stay less lonely and will help you to actually understand the exams and the module contents. So you get a 2-for-1. Great, isn't it? Now to the meat of this presentation, making a better plan. So you now understand the psychological consequences of stressful and traumatic situations, and you have some idea on how to structure your revisions and how to stay motivated. Now you need to go down to making your own better plan. And for this to do this, first of all, you need to have 3 ingredients. The first one is facts and practical information. Second, you need to understand your psychology a little bit, okay? You need to understand how you're working and how do you work under stress. And the third one is then to trick yourself, okay? To actually reach your goal. So, facts and practical of a battle plan. You should all know by now that once the exam is online, you have 48 hours to submit your answer. You don't have to stay online to answer the exam. And as long as you have internet connection for downloading the exam and then uploading the exam and exam answer, there is no need for you to be connected to the web. And now the next bit is crucial. There are reasons why we have exam conditions. And one of those is, and the most important one actually, is to provide you with time and a quiet space in which you are not interrupted and you can fully concentrate on answering the exam. So once you got the exam, downloaded it, and you're ready to sit it, on how you get ready for that, we'll talk in a bit, please make sure that you have a quiet space, okay? This means turn off your phone. You don't want to be interrupted by a call from your friends or your family or cold caller or whatever. Turn off the internet. When you have the internet at hand, it is super duper easy to get lost in the web and lose track of time and space. And it provides you with the ideal way of procrastinating from actually answering your exam question. So you need to make sure that this temptation is taken away from you, okay? So turning it off is the best way, because you will think twice whether it's actually you would want to turn it on again. And by turning it off, I mean, if you can, obviously it depends on who you're living with and what your situation is. Don't only turn it off on your laptop or your computer that you're working from. Turn it off at the source, okay? Because you will think twice of walking back to the router and turning it back on, okay? Obviously, that's not possible for everyone. But I urge you to really have it harder for you to get into the web when you're sitting your exam. Then you need to tell your housemates, your family, your pets, whoever is living with you, that whilst you are sitting the exam, you cannot under any circumstances be disrupted or disturbed. Okay? Maybe think about having actually, pinning a sheet of paper to the door where you're sitting the exam saying, please don't disturb, I'm sitting my uni exam. Have some water, drink, maybe a snack close by, because thinking, working will make you thirsty. And being thirsty doesn't help with your concentration. And then make sure you go to the bathroom before you start sitting the exam, because you don't want to pull a will from the in-betweeners, right? And when you're doing all of this, you have one and only one goal. Submit your answer on time, right? That's your goal. Now that we got some of the practical detail planning, we need to go into deep details, okay? As you know, but I'll repeat it again, you've got 48 hours to submit your exam answer once it has gone online. However, you should really and absolutely not work on the exam for 48 hours. Why this will be an absolute fatal decision, I'll tell you in the next slide, but really, even don't think about it, okay? So for now, let's stick to the practical. I want you to go back to your revision exam planning and add more details for the actual exam day. So for each exam, I want you to note down exactly what time is your exam available. And please make sure, if you're on a different time zone, that you account for the time zone differences, okay? So note down when the exam is available for your time zone, not for London, okay? Then you note down which day and time in your time zone the answer is due. And then I want you to decide on a time when you will actually sit the exam. Okay? And this is where you go back to kind of thinking and learning from the experiences that you had during your revision time. Okay? Because this is the revision time is for you to find out sort of really what is the time in a day that you seem to be working the best. Okay, when are you most focused? When are you most driven, most motivated in your days during your revisions? And then you will mark that time slot for when you will actually sit the exam. And the next one is crucial, okay? You absolutely will note down a time as to when you will submit your exam answer, okay? And you will stick to it. There will be no deviation from it. And don't make it the very last minute of when you can submit the exam answer. You never know the technical difficulties. I've already experienced that Moodle has been overloaded. Your internet may be slow. Your internet may be overloaded. Turnitin might have some catchy, whatever. You don't want to run into these technical difficulties and don't have any time anymore. Make sure you have plenty of time to submit the answer, so you give yourself a submission time well in advance of the 48 hours, okay? And then it is so important for you to have this day and time of submission to make sure that you actually have enough R&R in between exams. And if your exams are scheduled very closely together or might overlap, you'd even need to be more strategic, okay? Because depending on how many exams you're sitting, you need to make sure that you still have enough R&R between the exams for you to then refocus on the next exam. Okay? Now to the psychology. Again, because it can't be repeated often enough, you have to submit your exam answer within 48 hours once the exam is released. However, what is different this exam term, other than that, there's a minor virus going around and, we're having a pandemic, is that the exam conditions are completely different. Absolutely no one will check on you when and how you sit the exam. Absolutely no one forces you to stay concentrated and not to procrastinate. No one will make sure that you are not interrupted. And most importantly, no one will force you to submit the exam answer. For this exam period, you are all on your own. So this is the crucial bit where you have to understand how to kind of trick yourself to submit the answer, and having this very concrete deadline will help you. As I just outlined, exam conditions are completely different this year. And so the consequence of that is the pressure is really on you in times when concentration and decision making is already somewhat impaired. An exam term in itself is already quite stressful. Add in a pandemic on top of that, and you just might boil over. So I strongly advise you to do your utmost best to not fall into the following traps. trying to submit the perfect exam answer. We don't expect that. We expect normal exam answers. So please don't put that extra pressure on you. It's not needed. It's not necessary. And the next bit is also very, very important. Please do not think or mentally work on your exam answers for 48 hours. Use the time frame that you've made for yourself and stick to it. Leave it at that. Sit your exam at the specific period that you've set out to sit your exam, and then let it go. Okay? Anything else and you'll burn out. Okay? Because in any normal exam period, what is really great is that, you go into the exam hall, you sit your exam for 2 or 3 hours, you walk out, and you're absolutely forgetting about it already, right? That means you can have time to regain your strength, to sleep, to have fun, and to mentally prepare for the next exam. This year, you have to manage that yourself. And for that, it is crucial that you have space between the exams and you don't think and mentally work on the answers for 48 hours because you will burn out. Just to give you an analogy, a normal on how your brain might feel about this exam term. A normal exam term is already kind of a marathon with little sprints in between, and you sit your exam, right? But you know how you've been really exhausted at the end of exam term. That's because you just run a marathon. Now, with the added stress of what's going on right now, your brain is basically doing an Ironman with marathon sprints in between. So you will need to make sure that you have plenty and plenty of rest in between. Okay? So, please make a battle plan. And once it's in place, stick to it. Okay? Don't all of a sudden decide to attack from the right, or that you want cookies or crisps rather than those cookies. No. And that with that I mean, don't all of a sudden decide that you want to answer the exam question differently, or that you'd actually rather answer it like that or use that exam question just before you're submitting. No, don't do that. Make your plan and stick to it. Okay? All right, for those folks who are watching this as a mini-series, that is the end of episode 2. And now we are going into episode 3, the silver lining in all of that. All right. I want to quickly talk to you about personal and psychological growth that often occurs when you have lived through a time of crisis or extreme stress. And then I want to link that to the Kent graduate attributes and outline how this exam period really gives you skills that will be with you for the rest of your lives. And I want to talk a little bit about whether there's another silver lining that, maybe we're all transitioning to kind of a kinder world. So personal psychological growth. There's quite a lot of research out there, and I've jotted down one reference there that you can read up. But basically, it's the idea that once you've lived through a crisis, you kind of have an increased appreciation of life. You have sort of more meaningful interpersonal relationship. You have an increased sense of personal strength because you've just realized that you've lived through something really, really difficult. And you might also have sort of an increased sense of personal strength and changed priorities and all of that kind of stuff. And higher resilience. And we're going to talk about that in the last Kent graduate attribute. So let's go to the Kent graduate attributes. In case you're not aware, there's a whole website dedicated to that. It's basically skills and knowledge that we think you will acquire going through any degree within at the University of Kent, just by going through the degree and kind of working and improving yourself. And those are confidence, creativity and innovation, critical reflection, global and cultural awareness, integrity and accountability, intellectual curiosity, and resilience. So let's go through those attribute by attribute and think about how this exam term can actually help you to show and to show future employers that you have these skills. Confidence. Well, you have to sit this exam in a new kind of way, which basically means you have to completely project management your exam term on your own. And to do that, you have to acquire problem solving, because you need to understand yourself, but also understand what kind of technological or psychological difficulties you might have to overcome or have overcome in order for you to be able to completely project manage that. And then there's decision making. When do I submit? How do I submit? How do I want to tackle this exam period? All of those are contributing to confidence. And then there's assertiveness, so that the ability to stick to a plan and to assert yourself, and to do that to yourself as well, and not only to others. And then there's communication to others, in your study group, to the University of Kent, your module convener, speaking up when there is a problem that you can't solve on your own. So those are all attributes that contribute to confidence, and that you're increasingly learning through this exam period. Then there's creativity and innovation. And a big part of that of creativity and innovation is being adaptable. And we are all so adaptable at the moment, right? We as lecturers had to move online. You have to sit exams in complete different circumstances. The world has changed. We have to be so adaptable at the moment. And another part of innovation is also like learning to be digital literate, right? To know how to use different technology that helps you with your studies, and how to stay in touch with the University of Kent, the study groups, module conveners, and so forth. Then there's critical reflection. Well, that's a big one. Big part of critical reflection is career management. And how do I manage actually my career, my studies under these circumstances? How can I make sure I stay on track? Then planning an organization. How do I make a plan and stick to it? And how do I revise my plan in case something unexpected happens? Action planning. Well, when do I submit? It's up on me. But I will make an action plan on how I will do this. And then another really big part of critical reflection is actually this kind of self-awareness. To be aware, how do I actually work best? How do I stay motivated? What is my best time to work on really something really complex or difficult? And what do I value in my studies, in my career? Where do I want to go forward? Then global and cultural awareness. Well, this is a global pandemic. We just simply can't close ourselves off. And I think we are learning that all the time at the moment. But I think what we are also learning is a whole lot of empathy across nations that are affected by this pandemic. And to be aware of helping each other out, like the Chinese doctors coming to Italy to help out treating patients. All right. And as much as we have to network across countries, we also have to network when it comes to our studies, right? Because we have to reach out potentially across the globe. If you've gone back home, you're back in China, Malaysia, or Indonesia, wherever you're coming from, you need to reach out to other students who might be all over the world at the moment, to form these study groups, and to be able to interact with each other. Then there's integrity and accountability. Time management is hugely important for exam preparation and when sitting the exam. And that has something to do with integrity, being integer to yourself and saying, no, this is when I'm going to sit exam and this is how I'm going to do it. And accountability has a lot to do with reliability to yourself, to others, and basically to commit to doing what you've committed to doing when you first set foot in the University of Kent. And that is to finish this degree to the best of your ability, right? And that's what you want to need to keep in mind. Intellectual curiosity. Big part of intellectual curiosity is to think independently. And that's what you have to do when you engage with the module content in ways that makes you more curious to learn more. And that's what you can do with those study groups as well. And that's what you can do and develop online. And critical thinking, you don't only need for your exams and your studies right now, but you need to overall ask yourself what makes sense and what doesn't. Which information on COVID-19 and coronavirus can I trust? And how do I spot misinformation? And then there's the most important one that I believe comes and incorporates all of those, is resilience. And you are all developing huge amounts of resilience by just going through this period right now. Resilience basically means that having the adaptivity and perseverance to be successful with new situations and challenges. And at the moment, we all face challenges. And we are always in new situations. And this is something that you will really carry forward for your rest of your life. It will make you stronger by getting an understanding of yourself, such as how to take care of yourself, how to solve problems, how to acquire meaning and purpose in life, how to build and sustain a strong support system like study groups, by communicating with each other and by helping each other to have a positive outlook amongst all of that. And that brings me to another observation that I've made during this crisis. Looking around my community, I live in Whitstable in Kent, which is lovely. I've made the observation in Whitstable, but also across the UK, that people have shown many, many actions of kindness. From helping your neighbors, to leaving out painted stones, sort of from clapping for key workers, from, singing across the balconies in Italy, helping out each other's different nations, all of that, having out packages for delivery drivers of essential goods, all of that shows that we care about each other. And this world has already changed. And from what I've observed, to a much more kinder, much more empathetic one, where people help out each other, are grateful for each other, for neighbors, for friends, for families, and for random strangers that, in case you've heard my dog, she's been scratching herself in the background, that just watch my dog while I go into the shop. And now, to finally conclude, I want to give you 3 top tips for the upcoming months. The first one is stay healthy, okay? And with that, I mean mentally and physically, as much as you can, as much as in your power. Wash those hands, don't touch strangers, be in distance, work out if you can. Find out what makes you mentally healthy, singing, whatever, drawing, although you're being really bad at drawing, doesn't matter. Gardening, jumping around, turning on the music really loud, playing video games, whatever makes you happy mentally, do it. Reserve some time for it and do it. Stay connected to your family, your friends, us in the University of Kent. We can all stay virtually connected, which is just so amazing in this time and age. And then finally, stay kind to yourself and to others. If you have a bad day, you can't concentrate, don't beat yourself up about it. Acknowledge it, acknowledge how you feel. And if that lasts for a very long time, for too long, seek help. Talk to your friends, talk to your study group, talk to us at the University of Kent, talk to the Wellbeing Center at the University of Kent. Communicate your struggles. And if you have a good day, acknowledge that as well. Be proud of yourself and make some allowances for others in your study group, in your family. We all have good and bad days, but we can always choose to be kind to each other, and to be kind to yourself and others will go a long way during this crisis. And please remember, the storm will pass. We'll be all back together on campus, teaching face to face, going out with friends, making new friends, finding sort of back to life and our regained freedom. And maybe also a new appreciation and hopefully more empathy to others who might have gone through more than us, and to receive that back from others as well. And with that, I want to leave it. There are a few helpful links from the University of Kent that you might find helpful and that I've cited in the presentation, and a few helpful references and links from across the web. This is it for me. Stay healthy, stay connected, and stay kind.